Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. First, I want to start out by saying thank you for your feedback and your encouragement and your downloads. As our audience grows and more people are starting to listen in live each Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on flowradionetwork.com. But you guys are also downloading the podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep doing that. Keep talking to your friends. Keep promoting the show, helping me promote the show. We're having a lot of fun putting these shows together for you guys. And I appreciate your feedback because it's helping me come up with the topics that we talk about each week. So keep doing what you're doing, and I'm going to keep doing what I am over the moon about what I'm doing. So I'm going to keep it going. So now, I've done, several shows now, and am really excited about where we are and where we're going, and definitely want to keep it up. So keep listening. Also, we're going to have some special announcements in the very near future that you definitely don't want to miss. So definitely make sure you stay tuned to Jay's Quick and Dirty Money Tips. So with that being said, let's get on to today's topic. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, and it's kids and money. Just want to give you guys a little bit of background about me. My story is probably not atypical at all. In fact, it's probably the norm more so, at least, for my era, it's the norm more so than not. And it's that I grew up in a family where talking about money was essentially, it was taboo. We really didn't do it. I mean, you didn't ask your parents about their money, and they didn't offer up anything either. So, but one thing I know for sure though is we didn't have very much of it, or if we did, like I said, my parents really didn't talk about it, and from what I can tell, didn't really use it that responsibly either, because we had a lot of situations where, past due notices, disconnection notices, eviction notices, we had all of that going on. So, I know what it's like to kind of be without, but, that lack of knowledge and those images of those, those eviction notices and all that kind of stuff, that's what I took out into the world with me as an adult. But, fortunately, I got to college. I majored in finance in college, so I learned about money from a business and a corporate perspective. But even with that degree and that knowledge, it was still a few years later that I really began to make the connection and truly understand how to use money as a tool and learned about personal finance. But I'm really proud to say that from that point on, I began sharing my first with my family and then with friends. And at that time was the true foundation of my financial coaching. So, one of my main goals became teaching kids about money so that they would not grow up and hopefully, avoid some of the mistakes that I and others who grew up like me had to make. So in order to learn, because we didn't get it at home. So we had to kind of learn by trial and error and trial by fire. So with that being said, let's get to today's quick and dirty topic, kids and money, talking to kids about money. So, the holidays are coming up and this is as good a time as any, I think, to begin talking to your kids about money. A lot of them, a lot of kids out there are seeing their parents spend a lot of money buying a lot of things over this holiday season, over Thanksgiving. And if you observe Christmas and some of the other religious holidays in December, there may, gifts and things of that nature may be exchanged. So, obviously that stuff doesn't come out of thin air. So kids are seeing this, but talking to kids about money can be a little bit tricky. Kids are a lot more aware and they understand sometimes a lot more than we give them credit for. They may not say anything, but they see everything. And, they can tell if their parents are stressed about money or stressed even if they don't know why. So they can tell if there's, something going on in the household. But and I'm not saying that your child has to become your financial confidant, but I think it's important that we begin to answer their questions as honestly as is appropriate for their age. So obviously, you don't talk to a 6-year-old about the mortgage and all that, but actually you can in a very, very high level, relate it to you relate the concept of a mortgage to their dollhouse, or to their to the doghouse, or to any kind of tree house or something like that. You can kind of relate the concepts to them, but make it age appropriate. And that's really the real key here, is to really make the discussion about money with your kids age appropriate, because the more you can make it relatable for them, the easier it is for them to get the lesson, and I think the easier it is for that lesson to stick with them. So, again, how soon is it too soon to start talking about money? As soon as they start asking about money, or things that require money, I think is the right time to start talking about it. But again, the only thing that I really stress in all of that is that you make the conversation age appropriate, or situation appropriate. So I'll give you some examples, kind of how I talk to my kids. I have I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old now, but when they were kids, I started talking to them very, very early on, when we would go out into the store, and we'd be in the store and they'd ask for these things, and I started trying to talk to them about the concepts of cost versus value, and talking about do we really need this versus do we really want? Is it a want or is it a need? And really start talking some of those concepts with them. But I tell you, and I'm going to go into those things a little bit more in just a minute. But one story that just came to mind as I was talking here is, I remember being at on a trip with my kids, and I think we were in Chicago at the time. We were at the Field Museum in Chicago, and typically when we go to museums, and I allow the kids to go to the gift shop and get, something from the gift shop as a memento of their trip to that particular venue. And I remember being probably 10 or 15 feet away from my kids. They were probably 11 and 8 at the time. And they were looking around, and typically I give them $15 each to spend in the gift shop. And so I remember my youngest, the 8-year-old, saying to the 11-year-old, that she wanted to get a particular thing. And I remember my 11-year-old saying, well, you could get that because it's only, I don't know, it was $12 or $13 or whatever. But if you keep looking around and really make sure that that's the one thing that you want, because if you get that, you can only get one thing. But if you go look around, you may be able to get 2 or 3 things, depending on, if you can find something that is, $4 or $5 or something like that, $5 or $6. And I got to tell you, that was probably one of the proudest moments of my parenting at that point, up to that point, because it let me know that they had been listening, even though I'd been talking to them for years about money and value, and making sure that you're getting the best value for your money. You never really know if they're listening until you see it in action. And to see that was, it just made me so proud. I was very proud of myself. I was like, all right, I did something right as a parent. So, and then I remember, several years ago talking to my nephew. Again, like I said, I took that information that I learned and I went back and started teaching my family. And I remember talking to my nephew. He had to be probably 14 years old at the time. He's 30 now. But we were he was on spring break. He came to visit me for spring break, and we were in like a Macy's or something like that. And he wanted some brand name clothing of some sort. And I don't remember what it was, but I remember starting to teach him about this concept of value versus cost. So, just because something costs a certain amount, is it really worth that? Does it carry that value for you? So really trying to get him to start to evaluate his purchases a little bit differently as well. And again, another story of him coming back to me years later and saying, Auntie, I still remember that. I still think about that when I go and I make purchases now. And it really makes me happy to be able to relay those kinds of stories. And do they blow money and spend it frivolously and all that? Are they always so cautious? Absolutely not. But the times that they are, and they tell me about it, it makes me proud to know that, at least, like I said, I got through to them. So, but in the course of all of that, you got to make sure we tie in this sort of concept of needs versus wants, because a lot of times, kids will be out and they'll see stuff. They've seen commercials, and they've had things pop up on apps that they've been working on or whatever, and now they feel like they have to have those things. And it's like, wait a minute, we have to really make sure we're explaining this concept of needs versus wants. So is this something that you need? Is it for school? Is it, something, piece of clothing or something like that? Is it a need versus a want? Something that is kind of a nice to have. It's like you don't necessarily need it. It's not a necessity. It's not food, shelter, clothing. It's not any of those things, but it's one of those, man, my friends have it, so I want it. So just making sure we're kind of talking to them about those things, and understanding that we can't always get everything that we want. We as parents will do everything that we can to get them what they need, but they can't always get what they want. And just, laying out that the differences of those things, and making sure that they understand that we'll do all we can for them in that regard. But the other thing too is, don't be afraid to talk to your kids about your finances obviously on a very, very high level. Talk to them about the fact that, for your family, you have a spending plan, you have a budget in your household, and you have income and expenses, and obviously explain, what those things are at an age appropriate level for them, and just let them know, if we have X number of dollars coming in, then we can't spend more than that, because then we're going into debt and we're utilizing credit and all those other things. And obviously that opens up a whole other conversation, but you can keep it very, very high level with kids and just let them know that we operate on a budget and we have a spending plan. And sometimes the things that we want don't fit into that particular month's spending plan. So we may not be able to get those things, and just help them to understand that. And because I think kids really value being made to feel important and made to feel a part of the household and the process. So let them know that you're not just saying no because you're saying no. You're saying no because, here's our spending plan, and we've got a plan for our money. So let them know that. And, another concept that I've been really focusing on teaching my kids and others is this concept of having 3 piles or 3 buckets, or 3 distinct uses of the money that they have an opportunity to have. And that is this concept of saving, sharing, and spending. And so what do I mean by that? Well, obviously the saving bucket is pretty straightforward. You don't want to spend all that you get or all that you have, all that you make. You don't want to spend everything. So, maybe you want to set some goals. Maybe you want to go on vacation, or maybe you want to buy a car in the future, or maybe they just want to put something aside for the future. So, in the concept of teaching them about saving, you can also teach them about goal setting. So that's something that, I've been trying to do with my kids. If they tell me they want a certain thing, okay, that's great. So as you get money, allowance, money for chores, or, birthday money, or, maybe parents or grandparents send you money for holidays or for your grades, or whatever source it comes from, let's create a plan for it. Let's set some goals for it. Then there's this concept of being able to spend some portion of spending the money that you get. And again, this is where that budget or the spending plan comes into play, and that whole discussion we just had about needs versus wants. When you get funds, when your kids get the money, let them know, look, don't spend everything that you get. We're going to save some, but we're going to spend some. And you can kind of set out. And for my kids, typically what I will do is allow them to, they have to save at least 20% of whatever they get, and they have to share at least 10% of what they get, and then they can spend the remainder. So I think that's, that allows them to almost mirror kind of probably what they're going to be doing as they get older and get out in the workforce, how they're going to kind of spend their money as they get older. So trying to get them started earlier, just thinking about that, and the percentages may move around, but trying to get them to understand the concept. So, so you're going to save some, you're going to spend some, but you know what? You're going to share some as well. And that's centered around the sort of charitable concept, the concept that, there are less fortunate people out there. There's some people out there that, don't have as much as you do. And it is the right thing to do to share what you've been blessed to have. And I don't want to turn this into any kind of religious discussion or to interject religion into the discussion, but I truly believe that we are blessed so that we can be a blessing. So I believe that if we have resources that come to us, it is incumbent upon us to share. So because you don't know what people's situations are. Some of it's driven by their own, unfortunately, maybe bad decision making, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. Some of it's driven by circumstance. Maybe they had medical bills, bankruptcy, a death in a family, divorce. Any of those things could happen. It is not our place to judge. It's really incumbent upon us to find organizations or individuals or other entities that mirror the values that we're trying to instill in our children, that so that they can go out and make contributions to those organizations to help carry out their mission and their vision. So that's one of the things that I really try to stress, is that sharing is very, very important. And it could be sharing your money. And if for whatever reason money is not available, share your time. So teaching them about that as well. Share your time. And it could be a particular event that happened that strongly affected your child, and they want to know what they can do to help. Perhaps they can start a fundraising effort for that person or that family or that organization. And they can be the first donors. They can take part of their money and be the first donors to that entity or organization or whatever that event was. So again, we want to make sure that we are being as open and forthcoming with our kids as possible, but also trying to make them into well-rounded individuals, and as well as teaching them about these personal financial concepts. So the 3 buckets is really the heart of, I guess, talking to your kids about money and trying to teach them about personal finance. But, there's really a couple more areas that I want to discuss today. And one of them is this continuation from a previous show where we talked about credit. I think it is vitally important that we talk to our kids sooner rather than later about credit. And, one of the ways I think is probably easy to talk to our kids and educate our kids about credit is explain to them the difference between credit cards and gift cards. Because I know, kids are younger, they think cards just credit because they look just like credit cards, and they almost act like a credit card, because you can go to the store and you swipe your card and just like a credit, but it walks the items, but no money exchanged hands. And a lot of times kids don't really understand the nuanced difference between a credit card and a gift card. And in this case, obviously we know what the difference is, but we need to make sure our kids understand the difference between, credit cards and gift cards and how they work. And making sure we're talking to them, again, age appropriately, about the potential consequences of borrowing and using other people's money, which basically is all that, is all credit is using other people's money. So just make sure they understand. And we talked about that in real detail in that show on credit. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of it here. So you can definitely go and listen to that show or download the podcast. But making sure that our kids know about that is really, really very important. So we need to make sure that as talking to our kids about money, we don't leave out some discussion about credit as well. But here's something before I wrap up. There's one other thing that I think is kind of fun, that I think is a kind of family activity. And it's this concept that I read about a few years ago, and I thought, man, what a fantastic idea. I wish I had thought of this. So, I was doing some research for a client and came across this article, and I really tried to remember, but I cannot remember what magazine it was in. But essentially it laid out the idea that we could mirror one of our retirement savings vehicles for our children. And I was sitting there, I was like, wonder what that is. And it turns out it's 401k for kids. Now, I'm sure you all heard of a 401k, but in case you haven't, it's a tax-advantaged retirement savings account that you have with your employer, whereby you're able to save and invest part of your income pre-tax. The funds designated for the 401k are deducted from your pay before taxes are calculated. So I thought, okay, maybe we could do that with our children. In order to truly mirror the concept, I had to determine, okay, well, if I'm going to be their employer, what's their job? And like Eureka, it's like school is their job. Them going to school and getting good grades and all of that, that's their job. So they receive money for good performance, i.e. good grades, just like, we at work, we get performance bonuses. They get grade bonuses, I guess. They get performance bonuses. So, and also, when they receive money from, parents, grandparents, et cetera, it can be put into this savings or investment account. And then we as parents, we can match their savings, effectively creating a family 401k or kids 401k. And now, before you guys jump all over me, a couple side notes. One, I know that it's not exactly like a 401k because the money that the kids are the money that kids are getting is not technically pre-tax because they've received after-tax dollars from their parents and grandparents. That wasn't lost on me, I want to make sure y'all understand that wasn't lost on me. And then also, the matching funds are after tax as well. I understand that, but it's sort of pre-tax to the kids because they're not getting taxed on it. And like I said, you can expand this opportunity to include allowance money, birthday money, not just from grades or whatever. So all of that can kind of go into the pot. But what the real message I think in setting up the 401k is that children can begin to learn about saving and investing as they get old enough, and then start to make some of those decisions about how their funds are invested for themselves. So, as teenagers, they could really be running their own or be responsible for their own investment account and learning about, when to buy, how to buy, what to buy, all of those things that while they're relatively young and they have probably a relatively small amount of money to learn from. And if they're going to make some mistakes, to make mistakes on versus when they get out into the workplace and now they've got hopefully a larger pool of funds to work with now, but they already understand the underlying concept, so they can make more informed choices with those monies that they're going to be using for their true retirement and that sort of thing. So, and it also gives you an opportunity to reinforce the saving and goal setting concepts as well. So, I really like the concept of this kids 401k from that perspective, about learning about saving, investing, and about, goal setting and that sort of thing. So, but truly, guys, the bottom line to today is I really wanted to share with you guys that I don't think it's too early at all to talk about money. As soon as the kids start talking about or asking you about money, I think that's when it's time to start talking to them about money in an age appropriate way. And that's really, the real caveat here. You got to make sure it's age appropriate and making sure that we, kind of try to make them into well-rounded individuals by maybe, if it applies for you, if it makes sense for you, this save, share, and spend concept is I think, a great concept to teach the kids starting out to really understand, to really kind of reinforce being a complete, really having a thorough understanding of your finances and really being, just a good citizen to those around you by sharing some and to yourself by saving and spending a little bit on yourself. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys, kind of break the ice on talking to your kids. And hopefully, some of the stories I use for my own kids or my own family, maybe you can utilize some of those stories as well or glean something out of that. So, well, listen, guys, I appreciate you guys listening in today. And I'm like I said, I'm super excited. Thanks for continuing to support Jay's Quick and Dirty Money Tips, and make sure you guys continue to listen. And you can download the podcast at flowradionetwork.com, or you can listen live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on flowradionetwork.com. But definitely make sure you tune in next week, where I'm actually going to just have a little fun with it. And we're just going to free flow next week, where I'm just going to be talking about just current events, just things that are going on, and taking some of the feedback that you guys have given. I'm going to use those as my topics for next week's show. So make sure you tune in. It's going to be really, I can't even really give it a title, because it's going to be kind of a hodgepodge of information. I know one of the things that people have asked me about was kind of this concept of final expenses versus insurance. Funeral. Prepaid funerals versus insurance was one of the things that someone asked about. And then another young lady wrote in that, she's just getting started in the workforce and wanted to kind of know what she could do to start on her retirement planning. So we're going to be just kind of talking about a hodgepodge of things. So make sure you tune in next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And thank you so much for tuning in to Jay's Quick and Dirty Money Tips. And we'll be in touch again real soon. Take care.
Live, rocking the nest. This is flowradionetwork.com.